top 3 scary cursed objects that we're going to be talking about today. Objects can make your life a living hell, from causing bad luck, financial strains, to even illness and death. So since we're all about death and bad luck here, I thought we would cover some cursed objects. Let's get into what is a cursed object? Maybe you know what a cursed object is, or maybe you get confused sometimes and you're not too sure. So in lore, it is an inanimate object that brings misfortune, harm, or death to the person that has it. These objects become cursed through a few ways, if somebody puts a hex on it, or if the item itself has seen some very f***ed up shit that it soaks in all that negative energy into the item itself. So the person that owns the item that possesses it, sometimes even if you just rub up against it and touch it by accident, you could have this bad luck with you. But generally, it's a lot worse if you own the item. Some of these items that we're going to talk about are in museums. Most of these items are in museums, but for an item to be cursed, it doesn't have to be in a museum. It could be your everyday favorite mug that maybe you bought at Value Village or whatever, you bought off eBay, right? It could be a cursed item. Depends on the item itself, what it's been through, what kind of things is absorbed around it. Now, I'm gonna botch this name. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. It's O-T-Z-I. Otzi the Iceman, and he is an item since he's dead. It was found in Italy in the Otzal Alps, and this kind of discovery is like your fairy tale discovery. And it's a really interesting story that comes along with this find of this dude. So he is around 5,300 years old. He's an old fella. And this cursed object, his body count is 7 people, and him himself was murdered. But we'll get into all of that. So they found him frozen, perfectly preserved in these Alps. You can make out his tattoo of how well he was preserved. Also, his clothes that he had on were perfectly preserved as well. So they knew how he dressed back then. They knew his fashion sense. He was so well preserved that they actually thought he was a climber and that he died not 5,300 years ago, but more recently. And that he was a climber, that he got caught in the cold weather and he froze to death. They didn't know that this dude was fucking ancient. He was discovered on September 19th, 1991, which his anniversary of discovery is coming up pretty quickly here. 10,530 feet up into these Alps that they have found. German tourists were hiking through these mountains and they saw this weird brown little thing poking out of the ground like an ice cube. So they went over to check it, dug around, and they found this corpse preserved in the ice. It was a marvel of a discovery. So well preserved, they had his genome sequenced, relatives traced, they even had the contents in his stomach analyzed, even his disease diagnosed. So he had Lyme disease, parasitic gut worms, gallstones. He was generally pretty healthy. And he died around the age of 45. Now they found he didn't die from the cold, but he was murdered based on the arrow lodged in his shoulder and the trauma to his skull. So shot with an arrow and then bludgeoned to death in the head was the cause of death. They found him in the ice, right? They did all this stuff. But along with them finding him in the ice, his clothes and these weapons were all found with him, perfectly preserved. They excavated the well-preserved hat, shoes, even the arrow that killed him survived. For many people involved, this was a lucky find. But for others, this would certainly turn into an unlucky find. These people, within a 1-year time, they would all meet their fate, death. So we gotta fast forward to about 2004. One of the German tourists, Helmut Simon, who found him, died during a blizzard while hiking in the same spot as he found this dude. Almost like the mountain's like, hey, you took this guy away, now we have to replace him with you. Kind of scary, kind of eerie. Maybe a little bit unlucky. But an hour after his funeral, Dieter Wernick, who led the team to find Simon in the mountains, had a heart attack at 45 years old, the same age as the Iceman who died in the mountain. I wouldn't say it's coincidental, but I mean, if he was leading the hike to find Simon, I would feel like he's in pretty good shape, pretty healthy, right? You'd have to be to climb a mountain. Now, things keep getting weirder. Konrad Spindler, one of the first people to ever analyze him, died from complications with MS at the age of 55. His disease was diagnosed not too long after the Iceman discovery. Rainier Hen, another examiner, died in a car accident at the age of 64. People are just dropping dead all around. He was on his way, actually, now this is speculated, that he was going to give a lecture on the Iceman himself when he got into this car accident. Kurt Fritz was next to kick the bucket. He helped with the recovery of the Iceman. He died in an avalanche at 42 years old, right? You're seeing a trend here of people kicking the bucket. Now, the death toll does not stop there. Rainer Holtz was next. Long list, I know, but you know what? These people, they were cursed, all right? They defiled his sacred ice tomb, therefore, bad luck. So, Rainer Holtz, he was a filmmaker. He was documenting the retrieval of the Iceman, and he was making this little documentary and filming. 47 years old, he died of a brain tumor. And Tom Loy, who was a molecular biologist, he actually discovered 4 different types of blood on the Iceman's clothes and tools. He died from complications from, kind of weird, a blood condition, which was diagnosed after his first examination with the Iceman. Tom Loy died in October 2005, okay? The killing started in 2004. So all 7 people that were connected with the Iceman died within a year, all of them. Now, was this really a curse, or was it a string of coincidences? What do you guys think? So, he was the first ever human being to probably ever do the dab. I know, it dates back that far. I didn't want to believe it, but now we know. One of 3 cursed objects that we're reviewing tonight. This next cursed object is a famous one. You may have heard of this one. King Tut's tomb. You know King Tut? I think we all know King Tut. When you defile a tomb of a civilization who is obsessed with death and afterlife, well, chances are you are probably going to get cursed. In the Valley of the Kings in 1922, this tomb was discovered. But what set off the story? It came from a form of a shaving accident. So Tut was an 18th dynasty pharaoh, a child king, 9 years old when he ascended the throne. You thought kids today grew up fast? Back then, it was a different story. He died 10 years later. How? Well, no one's sure. That part is a mystery, and we'll probably never figure out how he actually died. Though some speculate it was an accidental death. So they found his tomb, but it was already breached. Signs of a grave robbery. But they shined a candle through it and found some items, as well as a door at the back that was not breached. So people doing this dig got really excited, like, hey, we found the room, and this door in the back there, the robbers did not get into. So they're kind of curious as what was in that room. Word spread like fire around the world that they found King Tut's tomb, right? This was a big deal. People from all around the world came over, look at this dig site to check it out, right? To see how things were going. Though they had not found King Tut's body at that time yet. They weren't even sure if he was actually in this tomb that they found, since they had to close things down for the season, so they would have to wait to actually open up that next door and see. They're shut down for the season, and Lord Carnarvon, he was the one that was funding this whole dig, this whole expedition, right? He's like, we're gonna find him. Here's the money. Let's go do it, all right? He was bitten by a mosquito, and while he was shaving, he nicked said mosquito bite. You're shaving, it happens all the time, and he nicked it. Now, you would think nothing of it, right? Though, soon after, he died from blood poisoning, nicking the cut. With his death, the story took off. Papers all around the world were writing about his death, how it was an Egyptian curse that actually caused him to die. It was a media frenzy. A lot of media were saying that clay tablet was broken as they were going into this tomb, and that's what caused the curse. Some were saying that elementals that were guarding this tomb were seeking vengeance for people desecrating it. It was a whole thing. It was really weird. It was some wild shit. This was all going on. The media was like, it's cursed, it's cursed. Howard Carter, he was the main archaeologist of the dig. Kept digging and he reached the pharaoh's tomb. Inside, found King Tut's body and over 5,000 items, including a gold coffin and the famous golden mask. This was overshadowed, though, by a long list of people who were connected to the dig who started to die. So after Carnarvon, George Gould, a railroad magnate, visited the tomb, and he died of pneumonia shortly afterwards. Egyptian Ali Kamel Fahmy Bey, woo, that's a fun name, was another tomb visitor. You know, they went to visit the tomb, and within that year, he was shot to death by his wife. So it's still the year 1923. Carnarvon's half-brother, the guy who funded the expedition, died from what they said was blood poisoning. So Carnarvon died of blood poisoning. His half-brother died of blood poisoning. Archibald Reed, a radiologist who x-rayed King Tut's sarcophagus, he died as well from a mysterious illness that he caught. What was it? They're not too sure. Sir Lee Stack, Governor General of Sudan, and one of the first to visit this site, was then assassinated. So let's move to 1926. More deaths on the horizon. Ooh. French Egyptologist Georges Benedict fell outside the tomb as he was, at the tomb, exploring it, and he fell outside and he died from the fall. Arthur Mace, a member of Carter's team, was next. He became ill and in 1928 died from arsenic poisoning. 1929, Carnarvon's other half-brother caught pneumonia. That same year, Captain Richard Bethel, he worked for Carnarvon and Carter, died in his bed under suspicious circumstances. Months later, his father threw himself out a window and left behind a suicide note saying this, "I can't stand any more horrors." So in the 7 years, all these people died. All these people that were connected to King Tut's discovery, dead. Just died. But it did not stop there. Over the decades, people who visited this tomb, who helped with the tomb, wrote about it, transferred artifacts for it, or was related to someone who did those things, was rewarded with the word curse in their obituary. Now, let's talk about the archaeologist, Howard Carter. Now, you'd think the person who did the digging and found King Tut himself, maybe he would get the worst of the curse. He did not. He was fine for about 2 decades, though he died of Hodgkin's disease in London at the age of 64. Still a terrible death, right? So to this day, people still believe that these items are cursed, but they are in display for people to see. So what do you think? Cursed or not cursed? We're going on to number 3. Now, this third one is not, well, I don't think it's as famous as the other two, but it definitely has a body count. And in my personal opinion, I think that this item is cursed. It's no Iceman or mummy, no treasures of gold in this one. This next cursed object is something ordinary. One you'd probably never suspect that was cursed, actually. Of course, those ones are the scariest ones, right? Not knowing that maybe your coffee mug or something could be cursed. It's so ordinary and plain that you wouldn't even think about it. It's an old chest with the drawers for storing clothes. This is called the Conjuring Chest. This is a crazy one, to be honest with you. If this was not written down and kept track of over the years by a family member in this family, you wouldn't believe the story. The Conjuring Chest. To this chest, there's a curse attached to it. Whoever uses it, severe harm will come to that person or family members. The idea is that if you put your clothes inside this chest, you will die, or something bad will happen. And those who have owned it have died, or bad misfortune has come to their family. The kill count for this one is 16 people throughout the course of its existence. So how was this made and how was it cursed? It was 1830 and it was crafted by a wealthy but cruel slave owner, Jeremiah Graham, or his nickname, the Devil Incarnate. So right away you know that this guy is a really cool dude. He got one of his enslaved workers, Remus was his name, to build this chest for one of his imminent firstborn children to store clothes in. After this was done, Jeremiah hated it. So what did he do to Remus? He beat him to death right after he finished it. Right then and there, just beat him to death. The other enslaved workers in this house did not like this one bit. They got together and they retaliated. Now, not in a vicious way, not like, we're gonna overthrow and use violence. No. They used a curse instead. So they sprinkled dry owl's blood inside the chest itself while reciting a spell called Dirge of Conjure. This is where the name the Conjuring Chest came from, right? And this would go on to torment Graham and his descendants over the course of the next century. When Graham placed the clothes of his firstborn inside the chest, that child died right away. Graham's nephew was next. He used the chest until he was about 22 years old, where then he was stabbed to death by a servant. This was just the start of the bad luck. Right? This train keeps going for a long time. Chest got moved to Tennessee, to Graham's daughter's house, Catherine Winchell, I believe her name was. Ryan, her husband, left to find work, and soon after, Catherine came down with an illness and eventually died. Now, what's interesting is that a week later, Ryan died. How did he die, though? It's kind of weird how he died. He died from smashing his head on a stage plank on a boat. Something that wouldn't kill you, but killed him. Their daughter, Eliza, and John Gregory, her husband, inherited the chest next. They had a daughter, Louise. She died at the age of 10 after using the chest, storing her clothes in it. So their daughter-in-law, Stella Stone Cipher, died within 2 years after using it to put her wedding clothes in it. Years later, a relative of Gregory's family moved in and married a man named Wilbur Harlan. They had a baby named Chester. They stored his clothes in this chest, and 2 weeks later, the baby died. Now we go to John Gregory's sister, Lucy. So Lucy knitted her son a pair of clothing, right? Wrapped it up in a gift and put it in the drawer of this chest to hide it. This was for Christmas, and around this time, her son would not see the Christmas present because he also died. How he died was interesting. He actually fell 30 feet to his death. falling through a train trestle. So the curse continues. You know, it's racking up body counts like fucking Jason Voorhees. The curse continued to wreak havoc on Eliza's life. Her daughter stashed her wedding dress in this chest next, and soon after, her husband left her. John Gregory himself died because he stored some clothing in there as well. Eliza, not being able to take any more of the curse, killed herself. She couldn't take it, so she ended her life. So the chest moved from Eliza to Eliza's granddaughter. So Eliza's granddaughter is the reason why we know about this chest in the first place. It's because of this woman. She's the one that traced back and wrote about these tragic events, right? Traced all the bad stuff in the family all the way back to the slave owner. And her grandmother, Eliza, also told her the story when she was younger about this cursed chest, right? And she even witnessed through the years bad luck happening to these people. So Virginia Hudson's first child was born prematurely and died after she placed baby's clothes in this chest. Her second daughter, Anne, also used this chest, but she did not die. She got polio, and for the rest of her life, she suffered severely from it. Wilbur Brister, the husband of Hudson's third daughter, died of an overdose of ether during an appendectomy after his wife's wedding clothes were in the chest. So then it continues. They also had a neighbor, and he needed a place to store his hunting gear, right? Came over and he placed his hunting clothes in there for safekeeping, and he was an avid hunter and he loved guns. Soon after, a couple weeks later, he died in a gun accident. So death was happening everywhere. Just bodies were dropping through the decades, right? So she sought help from a family servant named Sally. She knew how to get rid of this curse, or at least hold it at bay. She needed a dead owl, one which was given to her without her asking, which she had luckily because someone gifted her an owl years prior. It was a taxidermy owl. Next, she needed leaves from a willow tree, which she got. She boiled the ingredients together and buried it under a lilac bush because flowers mean love and promise. To make sure that the handle of the jug was facing east. Why facing east? Because Sally said the sun comes up from the east and the devil hates the light. How, though, would we know that the curse worked? How would she know that the curse worked? Well, Sally told her that the curse worked and someone in the household would die before the leaves of the flowering bush died. A couple months later, Sally herself died. And the curse, as far as we know, was held at bay. Or it might still be cursed. Chest finally left the family and went to the Kentucky History Museum in Frankfurt. That is where it is today. So you can go and see this cursed chest. Just don't put your clothes in it. You may die. And that was the top 3 creepy cursed objects, I should say. If you guys enjoy this, be sure to hit that follow button. Like the video. And I'll see you in the next spooky one.